And here's Jess.
Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business Radio. I am your host, Jess Dewell, and today we're talking priorities and values. This is program 168 of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. You're in the right conversational place. Let's put that in a different order. You're in the right place for conversations about current problems and needs and challenges and obstacles that we face as business leaders today. And it's what we do with each of those things to determine whether it's truly a failure, just a setback, or something that we can use to launch to the next level in our business. This is what it means to build tenacity, not only in ourselves and our teams, to build tenacity within our organizations. Because we want to bounce back. We want to bounce back higher than before and quicker than before with each learning experience. I'm Jess Dewell, founder and CEO of Red Direction, and I bring to you over 20 years of advising, consulting, and facilitation experience, both in operational strategy and organizational culture, where values and purpose intersect. Both practical and unexpected, my views tune into the uniqueness of your organization. Companies that work closely with me learn to ask the right questions and think effectively on their feet. By feeding our intellectual curiosity and flexibility, you, leaders within your organization, are able to focus on decisions that maximize your growth. I'm your business advocate, specializing in working with companies at critical points of development to balance and figure out the interplay between growth with the constraints that are found in our leadership and operations. And this is my absolute positively favorite topic. I'm glad you're here with us today. Live streaming. Use hashtag VBB Radio. Use email address radio@reddirection.com. We are live streaming on Facebook. We are live streaming on YouTube. Make sure that you're sending in your questions, joining in this conversation right now and after this program concludes. We'll be back right after this.
Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business, the show that provides everything smart leaders need to evaluate situations, build relationships, and create solutions. Jessica Dewell candidly talks about the skills necessary to build tenacity and do more with less. And now, here's Jessica.
It is Tuesday, July 31st. We're talking priorities. We're talking values. We are talking, and that is most important when we're thinking about what the Voice of Bold Business Radio offers us as business leaders today. Busy business leaders, leaders with not much time, and yet we want to improve ourselves. We want to take the time, the necessary time, even in small, tiny chunks, to do what is best not only for us, but for us to be the best us, to develop our people, to develop our companies, and see where we're going. So today is going to have a little bit of a different flow in the sense that we have our main topic and that flow will stay the same. We're trying out some new technology. So I'm going to give Eva or Scott, whomever's going to tell us about this technology, a few seconds to get unmuted and join me here on the program. In the interim, what I'd like to do is make sure that you know hashtag VBB Radio is what Eva is looking for behind the scenes while we're live streaming. Both during and after the show, that hashtag will keep this conversation going. Also, radio@reddirection.com gets your insight and information in a longer form to our team so that we may incorporate it into a future show. And that's what this is about, the conversation. Eva and Scott, which one of you is going to join me for just a few minutes?
Well, I'm going to be joining you in the background. We have 3 questions from listeners who have sent their questions in, and we're ready to play them anytime you want to introduce them into the program.
Awesome. And how did we collect those questions, Scott?
Well, in 2 ways. Actually, we solicited for 3. One way was through video. Someone could just produce a short video of their question and submit it using their favorite platform. The second was audio only, And we have a special way for viewers and listeners to do that makes it very simple. And actually, the third way was just to type in the question, and we reproduced it here, and I have a voiceover for the questions from 2 of the 3 listeners today.
Fantastic. This is great. So we collected these beforehand. We're incorporating them into the show, and they may pertain to this topic. They may pertain to a past topic, and we're going to work those in throughout the show because this is how it's done. This is how we build the conversation. And just like everything, we will do our best to segment and compartmentalize the information because we know switching gears in the middle of a topic can be tricky. And we want to make it easy to follow along, easy to digest, and most importantly, something out of this program, make it easy for you to grasp onto and use in your daily activities starting once we conclude today. Thank you, Scott, for spending a few minutes to do that. Now, I do have one other question for you. How do people start to take advantage of this technology that we have now to submit questions ahead of time?
Well, one way is to email you at radio@reddirection.com.
Perfect. And then the other ones, like if they want to record and send them in, we'll have that information on the website in a week or so.
And also, anyone who just wants to communicate with you directly, and then you can send them special directions.
Perfect. I love it. I love it. Thank you, Scott, for jumping in and getting on the hot seat with me for just a few minutes. I know this morning was a crazy whirlwind all the way around. So here we are. We're solid. Oh, I forgot to tell you, Scott. I forgot to tell you that I'm using a brand new computer. So I've got the whole setup. I was practicing last week, and this is the first time we've actually live streamed after this morning's previews. So I'm giving you a heads up, straight up for everybody. There's no secrets here. We are totally transparent, and we're going to go with the flow. We're going to see what happens, and we are ready to rock. And how do we rock? We rock by talking about these things that some people aren't as excited to talk about, or we're worried about, we're thinking about, and we don't know how to broach the topic. And in fact, I'm going to start with this statement. This statement, we prioritize what we value. Think about that for a second. We prioritize what we value. Okay, so that sounds great. This is something that's, I think we can all resonate with. Yes, inherently, I get that there are things that I value, and I get that there are conversations that are going to be had, that there is information out there that I'm going to seek out or be willing to listen to over other things based off of what's important to me. And I'm guessing the same is true for you. So the first thing I want to talk about is this concept of prioritizing what we value, the idea that we have personal values. Now, in my work, over 99% of people do not have written values. That means they might know what's important to them, and if you ask them, they might be able to pull out a concept or a phrase. However, there's not a word or a statement that reinforces these ideas that we can pull out when asked. And so I'm thinking about these personal values, and I'm thinking about how many people don't write them down. And don't worry, I'm not going to call you out or throw you under the bus. We all have different things that we focus on. And the reason I put a focus on personal values and knowing exactly what they are and how they're defined for me in my situations that I encounter every day, and then the ones that are super unexpected, that take us by surprise, that floor us, that give us that complete and utter left turn, when we know and we can rely on them because we've written them down, we read them, we look at them, we can articulate them really quickly, it means we are more prepared to assess a situation and jump in compared to otherwise where we have to go, how do we feel about this? Where do we stand in this? Do we even have a voice right now? Do I want to give up my voice? Am I going to stand and be a wallflower? Or can I participate fully right now and add to a situation? So this concept of written personal values is really important. And I would suggest that, even if it's while you're listening, maybe you've got your phone out because you are walking and listening, or you're commuting and you're sitting on a bus or a train while you're listening, think about what is important to you and be writing that down. Be writing just free form, write it down. Because when we know what we value, we know how to show up to other people. We know how to show up to other people in a way that allows us to keep our power without feeling icky or that we are what is a good description here? That it doesn't feel good. When we compromise, when we work together, when we are doing the things that we do, we want to make sure that we are true to ourselves. Even if we put our values second, they're at least second and not out the window. Written personal values. My personal values: elegance. What are my personal values? Curiosity and truth. And of course, I started to speak about that, and then I faltered a little bit because I'm like, ooh, I just put myself on the spot. And so, see, they don't always come readily to us. However, the more we talk about them, and I know you've heard those of you who listen to this program talk about that with me on occasion, and you know what mine are. And then that is how I show up to Red Direction. That is how I show up to the team that is working on client projects, that's working on the Voice of Bold Business Radio, that's working on the leadership roundtables and the other programs that we're offering. So what does that mean then in terms of how do we take these personal values and we incorporate them into an organizational structure? So I'm the CEO. I might as well be the janitor. It doesn't matter. My values are the same: elegance, truth, curiosity. And I understand that at Red Direction, one of our values is resourcefulness. So CEO or janitor, and depending on the day, I'm both, right? As is everybody on the team. We all wear many hats. That is something where I can go, okay, so how does what I stand for personally show up as resourceful? Well, the only way to do that is when we have shared meaning. And by shared meaning, I mean that we have a common story for the actions that we take. So in resourcefulness, sometimes that might show up as we're going to be as efficient as possible. Sometimes that means we're going to show up and we're going to be able to filter really quickly and get down to the nitty-gritty of what we need for the situation at this time. And sometimes that just might mean, okay, we're out of the blue, we're in the middle of a problem, we have no way to go secure external resources, so what do we have to use right here in front of us? All of those ways of being resourceful create a story at Red Direction. And so Scott and Eva and everybody else on the teams that are involved in different projects with us have the opportunity to bring their personal values to that. And here's what I see from once upon a time, me and other people that have come in and come out of our team. When there is a lack of understanding of what we value as an individual, there is a lot more misunderstanding when it comes to projects we are working on together. That means people might not understand the importance of deadlines. There might be a consistent requirement of meeting a deadline and it's consistently missed. Maybe it could be, that's just one example of how things show up when we don't have shared meaning. Other things might be this, I'm going to call it negativity. I'm going to call it negativity because there's a little bit of a poutiness that goes on, or a lack of feeling valued. And anytime anybody feels undervalued or not valued at all, it shows up in kind of a snotty, bratty kind of way. And we can see that in the people around us. So then what are we as leaders doing to make sure we have shared meaning? Well, in our case at Red Direction, we have meetings, we're talking to each other, we're brainstorming as we need with each other as a group and individually as small groups for the different things that we need. Now, when something comes up or decisions are made and they're outside of what the original concept was, there's a bigger conversation to be had. However, everybody on the team can do what they need, when they need, how they need to make sure that we're achieving the larger goals. There's zero micromanagement. And I'm going to tell you, I used to micromanage. And what's interesting, not only did I used to micromanage, I used to try and develop people into mini me's. I'm wondering what that actually looks like and sounds like and feels like to you. It took me a little while to figure that out. And one of the ways that we found out, and I had help from some other people to figure this out, was that my turnover, my ability to keep people in key positions, to keep people enjoying the work, was basically, the turnover was incredibly high. Okay. So I can own that. And I'm like, man, we all have to do that at one point. And it's a big process. We didn't have we knew what we were accomplishing. We knew what everybody wanted to do, but we didn't have something that we created shared meaning. So what I did is I brought all these random people together who were doing all of this specific work. And I tried to insert on top of everything this concept of shared meaning. Now, back then it looked like do it this way, do it that way, and do it this way and do it that way. See, micromanaging. Nope, that's not right. There's this way to do it. Well, you know what that did? That made people not happy. That made people leave. That made me realize, well, a long time in coming, right? This is something that you learn just by experience. And this was something I didn't have anybody to help me with. So this was a hard path all the way around of the fact that each of these people had their own strengths. And instead of me trying to sit on top and fit everybody into something, it would have been way better to go, what's your shape? And then build what we set on top to everybody's particular shape, size, strength. Most importantly, their strength and what made them excited. So, a lot of people later, a lot of turnover later, a lot of unhappiness later, we started to figure that out. And it took a personal self-awareness, which we are going to be talking about a little bit later. Now, we're talking about this written personal values and shared company values. Now let's relate it back to that high-level topic of this section, which is we prioritize what we value. So given some context and some thought, we've got this idea of, okay, now we can actually really look. Do we do what we value? Or do we just say what we value? Our actions, our reactions, and our responses indicate how we are doing that, what we are doing, and the behaviors that we choose actually show what we value. Okay, so I'm going to give, let me see. I have a tiny note here. I'm going to actually turn my page here and read this tiny note. Yeah, we started with hectic times, today being one of them. Whirlwind, we're all here, we're going. The thing is, how we show up in that, what our first response is, indicates what we value. Okay, so we have a whirlwind, and I'm going to totally take responsibility for that. It is my fault, by the way. We had a whirlwind. I caused a kink in the works this morning, and if I was Eva or Scott, and I'm not saying they're like this or they thought this, but I'm just saying for the example, I caused a problem. Okay, so in that problem, Eva and Scott have a chance to respond to me. I could go, it's my way because I'm just the host and we're going to do it when I show up. I could be like that, and I'm not. They could be like, man, she's late again, which, most of the time I'm on time, but I have a good, there's so many things going on. I have a tendency to be tardy once in a while, maybe even a slightly more than once in a while. I can own that. Time is not my strong suit. Using time is my strong suit. Punctuating according to a calendar, less so. So maybe they showed up that way. Meh, she's late again. What is going on? Maybe they were like, I can't believe this. Now I'm behind the 8 ball. I'm so stressed out. Why does she have to stress me out so much when we've got to do all this stuff right now? Right? Okay. So what that tells me is they might still like me the same, but they value something different than I do. I value, okay, we're going to get up. We're going to do this. It is what it is. We're going to make the best of it. In this particular situation, there was stuff happening. Here we are now. Let's move forward. Okay. So I value our time together. In the other two scenarios, there's a different value set. There's a value of timeliness. There's also a value of quality. I can't do my best when you push me so hard, right? That's a concept of that. So even in that potentially negative response that I'm totally insinuating here with Eva and Scott, but using it because we'll see the look like that on people's faces sometimes, right? We're in a meeting and something happens and somebody reacts. You know what that reaction is on their face. So what if we take that reaction as a leader and we say, okay, I see a reaction. So the trigger to the reaction is something that they value was, there's a word I'm looking for. And it's totally gone. So I'm going to try approaching this a different way. Something that they value, it was either misunderstood or they felt completely violated because something that they value totally went out the window in the bigger picture. And so as leaders, we're talking about awareness. This is the second time awareness has come up in this, but we can use it to figure out what makes people frustrated? What makes people angry? When we're lacking shared meaning or there's a misunderstanding about how we do what we do and the work that we do together, we can pull it out just by watching and observing. So we're going to talk about us. We're going to talk about us and not other people, because while it's easy to talk about other people, the work must start here with you, with me, to make lasting change. Now, before we do that, I'm going to check in with Eva and Scott, because this is a good part to process a minute, and let's check in. So Scott, based off of what we're talking about now, how do you feel about throwing in a question? Do you think there's a different time for that? Is now a good time to bring in one of our questions that we received before the program?
Well, here's a great question from Marilyn. Why don't we go to that?
Great. Let's do that.
Hello, my name is Marilyn Shannon, Marilyn@MarilynShannon.com. And I'm curious about what is the difference between values and priorities? Do you have to have a value in order to have a priority?
I love Marilyn's question. And she's been on the show before, and I think this is great because we know how detailed she is with the words that we use. So let's think about that. A value, something that is important to us, a priority, the order we decide to do things. And in a pinch, when there's too much to do and not enough time, also what we prioritize or what we don't prioritize falls off that list. So the way we're looking at it for the work and the conversation we're having today is that the opportunity to prioritize directly relates to the actions we will take and the behaviors that we deem important right now. Whereas the value lasts over time. And our values may shift a little bit. I will tell you though, the core root of them typically stays the same. Even when I was a little girl, I wanted things to be beautiful and functional. Elegance. Even when I was a little girl, the simpler something was, the more I was able to not only communicate it, but be able to understand it and make a stronger connection with somebody of another kind of elegance. So my curiosity, how do I make things as simple as possible? My curiosity, I don't understand why this behavior is happening. What makes this person respond that way? There's something somebody said on another program or a TV show or a conversation, and I don't know what it is. I'm going to go find out, right? Curiosity. So how we act, how we do us really is the core of what we value. And while the words may change and how we define it, it may shift over time. There is a core that is timeless for us. Now, priorities are, we're just done with high school. Do we go to college or not? We are in our first job after college, and we're like, man, we wanted to be an entrepreneur, but we're stuck here. What am I doing here? And maybe another one is, okay, I really think I have to quit my job. I really think I have to change the path. I have to own my career. How do I do that? Right? These are big questions that indicate something is out of alignment with our core. And maybe it's actually in alignment with our core. For example, changing roles. When the time came for me to leave Digital River all those years ago, I learned something that was really hard. I actually put my value and my values second because I felt like I owed it to the team. I owed it to Digital River, and I owed it to my clients. Okay, so we've got all these owed it. Well, right there, that's a pretty weighty thing. When we owe somebody something without them ever saying, you owe me. First of all, I don't know if that's the right conversation to be had, but there was never ever any indication. It was totally brought on by myself. And so I was out of alignment because I was staying even though I was being called to a different direction. I was staying because it was becoming clear that what my personal path for my workspace, for the work that I want to do in this world, was different than the work that I was currently doing and the path that I was on. There was a gap where I was going and where the position I was currently in is going. And there was a huge gap there. So I had to choose. Okay, I had to wrestle with this. Am I going to let people down to go do what I want to do? Or must do, in fact, because it was a calling? Do I stay and give something up for the team and just suck it up because it's the best thing to do. And in the end, we can, whatever we choose, when there's not an alignment with our values, the behaviors that we take at some point become so painful, so hard, we get burnt out, we want to retreat, we get frustrated and start blowing up, and we don't bring our whole selves into our work each and every day. And when it gets to that point, it can be really hard. And so when we're out of alignment with our values, it will show up. It'll show up in our work. And where I'm going with this, and it comes back to this concept of where we are going on our paths and where the company that we are a part of, whether we're leading it, whether we're leading a department, or whether we're just in a role within that organization, when there's a gap, that gap's going to get big enough and it's going to feel tough and hard. And, getting so mad that we leave in a huff and angry is not good for anybody. It is not good for anybody. And so this is one of the reasons that we talk about priorities and values, because as a company, and the things that I learned through my leadership career to date come down to the fact that the more we know about ourselves, the better we can communicate it to others. So there was a point in time, I can look back, hindsight being 2020, I could have said, hey, the right people at Digital River that I report to and talk to now that I'm part of this bigger company, I could have said, here's what my path is. How does that look in line with what you see the path being for where this company, Digital River, is going? I did not do that. I just kept going. I kept going. And I was doing great and I was having fun, and then I wasn't. And then it became too late and I got a little resentful. And did it hurt the transition? No, because I didn't let it get that far. But I realized at which point in time I started to feel resentful that there was something more going on, that we needed to, and the we meaning me first, I needed to speak up and I didn't. So what we value when we speak about it and articulate our priorities allows other people to hear what our priorities are, and they will also better understand the actions that we are taking. All right, so what we say versus what we do. I alluded to this a little bit, right? What we say versus what we do. Because remember, we're starting here with us in this concept of priorities and values. When we are unclear about what we value, we're going to be wishy-washy. We're going to make decisions that we think are best for the situation. And that typically what's best for the situation, when we're wishy-washy and we don't know, we might inadvertently be getting in our own way, sabotaging ourselves, and making what we're doing something crazy hard for us, crazy hard for others. And then now what do? Right? Our values also might include following through. So now we've made this decision to do this thing that we don't like, and it hurts us to even think about it. And that could be mentally hurt. It could be emotionally hurt. It could just be total avoidance because there's no interest in it whatsoever. Whatever that hurt, quote unquote, looks like. And bring it back. So we've got to get clear. Get clear on what we stand for, because the more we know what we stand for, the better conversations we can have. And then we can look at things like what I was telling you a little earlier about my micromanaging, or about the time I was like, I didn't know what I wanted my path to be, and it caused a problem. And once I decided what my path was, it became easier to have the conversations that required occur so that everybody could be on the same page in any situation. So I want to think about that, what you say versus what you do. And I'm going to give you an example. Okay, so names have been changed. If I use them, they have been changed. I'm going to try and stick to pronouns in this particular scenario. I'm observing a relationship and a dynamic in an office place. In this office place, there's somebody that always knows all the answers, always will be the one that everybody comes to when there's a problem, and always is willing to solve the problem. So they've become a bottleneck in the organization because everybody, quote unquote, needs them because they're the only ones that can do it. Well, that person self-righteously, and maybe because it's their skill to, maybe selflessly, we'll use both adjectives here, take on those problems and solve it so people can keep going. Well, the issue here is nobody ever learns to do it themselves. There's no other personal development. So not only is a niche created by this person in this organization to solve these problems that everybody has to come to, when there's a backlog or something happens, nobody can function when that person is unavailable, and everything slows down when that person is unavailable because they are now a bottleneck, because the culture becomes, go to this person in this office, have them solve your problem and keep doing your work. Well, that's good for efficiency. It's really bad for a lot of other things. People are like, but I want to solve my own problem. Well, they're told, well, you can't fail. We got to get it done right the first time. There's no time. Maybe next time. Maybe next time. Or an implied, maybe next time. Another thing that I see with this person, the dynamic that pops up, is that there's a lot of frustration with that person. I'm doing all of this stuff and nobody really appreciates me, and I'm not getting paid what I'm valued because I solve problems, and solving problems has a higher value than anybody else in this organization. Without me, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. As soon as you hear yourself saying without me, or my value is misunderstood, there's a different conversation to be had. Are they the skills you want to be using? Are they the skills that person wants to be using? Does that person have some sort of a complex that feeds their ego more than their fulfillment? And they're setting themselves, and then there's another piece of this. They could be setting what they want aside for the good of the organization, for the good of the team. All right, well, if that's their job, and if that's not their job, if they are solving problems, even though the role that they hold is different, there might be some resentment there. And so really being able to look at and go, oh, this is actually really good. Does this person want to be in this role where they're solving these problems or problems like this all day, every day? Let's have that conversation. And hopefully that person is also listening to the show and going, let me get clear. Do I want to be solving these kinds of problems all day, every day? Do I want to be this kind of a cog that connects a whole bunch of other cogs together? Not people here, but processes, making things happen, removing those obstacles to make the rest of the work be able to occur faster and better. And, some people don't want to solve problems. So we've got to check in. This person has a role, yet they're doing something else than what they were hired to do in their role. So a check-in is necessary. Is what we're doing in line with what we agreed to do? Is what we're doing and what we're saying the different thing? So that person might say, sure, keep bringing me your problems. And under their breath, they're going, rah, 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 or grumble, 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 right? So they're saying one thing and they're doing something different. We've all done this ourselves. Think about the last time, you get in the car, you've got to drive across town, and your gas light is on in your car. Or you take public transportation and you get all the way to the pickup station, whatever that might be, for a taxi or a train or a bus, whatever, and you forgot your passes, right? What do we do? How do we act? And what is our immediate reaction? If it's negative and we tend to think we're a positive person, there's a gap there. So what we say and what we do and how we respond is a clue that things are not right. And I use this every single day. Any single time I have a reaction that is less than positive in any capacity, even minusculely, right? I stop and take a look. What's causing this? Oh, I haven't had enough sleep. All right, so I'm grouchy. Oh, everything is going great. And I thought I said this. Maybe I didn't say this. I thought I said that, or maybe I implied that instead of saying it out loud. Okay. So we have this chance to reflect, and we're going to talk about that now, this opportunity to look. We know how we react. We know how we act. And I'm saying, in the moment, we have these priorities, and we may give up what we value and what we see we value for the greater good. We'll surrender. We'll, there was a word that Eva used in our previous, in our previews. Let me see. We will set them aside. We will set aside what we value because we don't like it, but we think it's a one-time thing. Well, anytime we do a one-time thing that turns out to work really well, guess what? We do it again and again and again. So there's at some point we have to recognize, aha, I didn't like it and I did it, and I set what I care about and what's important to me aside a little bit for the greater good in that moment. But once it starts to become a habit, we now have an agreement, unwritten agreement that says, we're capable of this and we're willing. Well, when we're not willing because we respond in a grouchy way, we react, we totally avoid things, we let things blow up, we let other people be late for their deadlines. that's a place we got to look a little closer to ourselves and within ourselves. So this is a gap analysis. I mean, I'm talking about what we do versus what we say. And when they are different, there's a space between them. That's a gap. And there's a way that we can analyze that gap. Before I talk about that, I do want to touch base really quickly and say this is Program 168, Priorities and Values, the voice of Bold Business Radio, and we are talking at this point about gap analysis. So thanks for joining in. Remember, use hashtag VBB Radio, email radio@reddirection.com, and we are watching for the things that you're saying, the things that you're sharing, and the experiences that you have. All right, gap analysis. There are 4 steps to a gap analysis. And those of you who know me really well, I like 4 steps to about everything. 3 is a good number because it's odd. 4 is kind of like 3 plus a bonus. So I stick with 4. And if I can distill it down to 4, it goes back to that simplicity. It also goes back to resourceful. What can we do to maximize what we have in the moment and still build our skills? Because we're talking about a gap analysis. And I'm going to go out here and I'm going to say gap analysis, the ability to do that is a skill. It's a thinking skill. It is a high level thinking skill. So tune this in, make sure you're listening very closely. The first step of the 4 steps of a gap analysis is knowing exactly where we're at. Aha. And in the scenarios we've been using, I'm doing this, but I believe and say this. So there's a difference between what I say and what I do. Okay? And then what? So we know where we're at. Where we're really at. And then we can go, do we like it? How's that working for us? We have questions like that will help prompt us. It's okay, it's not okay. So we can get out of our reaction brain and get into using our head, our heart, and our gut brains, right? The experience that we get from our gut, the feelings that we get from our heart, and the analysis and the creativity that comes from the brain in our head. So we have 3 distinct areas of our body that we can use, and we tend to only use one of those. So for this exercise, check in, because this is ourselves. We can ask other people and gather more data. I would suggest that we just do this internally. Let's practice and see how well are we using different senses, if you will, different brains within our body, the experiences, the feelings, and the creativity and problem solving that we have to do things. All right. So the second step is know where we're going. This goes back to what I talked about first. What do we value? What's important to us? What do we value? What's important to us? And write those down. And then we know where we're going. And if for the role that we're in, this might be contemplating an exit. This might be contemplating what exactly is necessary or how to ask what is necessary to achieve the promotion that we desire, that we are working toward, or the client that we want to work with. So many things that we have available to us. The next piece is, so where are we going? The third step is to document the gap. So we know where we exactly are, and we know where we're going. Depending on how far apart they are from each other, we may decide to do nothing. We may decide to go, holy crap, I can't believe that this has gone on so long, that this gap is so big. No wonder I'm frustrated, angry, burnt out, whatever emotion you might be feeling in those situations. So the bigger the gap, the bigger the feeling, the experience, the perception that we're going to have of a problem here. So number 1, know where we are. Number 2, know where we're going. Number 3, actually document the gap. Things like, okay, so we know there's a gap. What made this happen? Was it one of those Band-Aid situations that I used as an example earlier? I'll do it this one time, and then it comes up, oh, I can do that. Sure, I'll do that again. And then it becomes an unwritten agreement. This is what I do, and I don't like this thing I do. And what was the original cause, right? Those questions are similar yet different. And so the first part of that, right, is I allowed it to happen. I allowed myself to continue to solve the same problem or to handle the same situation because I did it one time. And it happened again and again and again. That's all me. So perspective and thoughts about that. Then the second piece, what caused it? Okay, so now there's something in the organization, within the team, that made this happen and come across my plate that allowed me to say, yes, I'll do it this one time that now turned into many times. And then we can consider how the possibility of what we can do to change. And that's all in documenting the gap. What is our part? What was the original external problem that caused us to own it? And then the third, or the additional piece there is, how do we, what is our possibility? What would it take to make this change? What do I need to make this change? So those are the first three steps. The last one is a decision that a change must be made, and a decision that there will be something that we do right now to continue and keep this moving forward, because we want to see something different happening. We want to see something different happening. We're making a decision to take action. And then we can go, okay, how do we take action? And what are we going to do to check in and see? Now, that's how you do a gap analysis in any situation. When we're talking about our own emotions and feelings and knowing what we value so we can choose the behaviors and make choices and prioritize our actions accordingly within our values, also within the values of the organization that we participate in every single day, that we contribute to make a better world, to give a product or service to those that need it. And before we go into that, let's take a quick pause. Let's do another question, since we have another question coming in that we can bring back, and then we'll apply this and use it in a specific situation as our personal approach to just creating awareness within ourselves. All right, Scott, give us another one.
Okay, here's the next question from a listener. Jeffrey from Seattle asks, aren't values and priorities age dependent? For example, shouldn't millennials have different values and priorities than, say, baby boomers?
Well, I think our priorities are different. So if I were to break this down, yes. And I'm going to use Scott's analogy, because those of you who know us go way back. And if I say it without giving him credit, everybody's going to go, she's not giving Scott credit. And Scott has 3 levels of, I think it's 3, Scott. And if I totally botched this, jump in and let's set the record straight right here, because this is your idea. When we are in our 20s and we're doing things, we're becoming adults, what we're doing is we're trying to find our way. Once we've decided, at least for a little while, what our way is, and we're trying it out, then we move into this phase of, Scott calls it empire building, where we are creating a name for ourselves. We are creating what is who we are, and we're making a difference in the world in a way that's important to us. And then as we age even more, we go into creating a legacy. What do we want to leave behind? How is the impact we made going to be remembered by others? So there's that arc. Did I get them all, Scott?
Yeah, terrific. I wish I could phrase it that well.
This is a good summary technique for me. So I got it. All those 3 things. And so our priorities might be different. Coming out of college, we might be looking for a job. We might be deciding we really want a house. How do we get a house? We might be going, okay, I'm going to live at home because my rent's going to be low, and I have more schooling I want to do. I have an apprenticeship I'd like to take. I want to intern someplace and find out if this is really what I want to do for the next, as the core part of my career. And so our priorities are different. However, how we go about that may be the same. So Jeffrey, one of the things that we've got is the concept of, maybe it's lifelong learning. I want to learn my entire life by taking classes and hearing from experts. Another way is I want to learn, and I'm going to go out and seek the information to help me process and think about the problems and challenges and dreams that I have in a different way to make them the reality that I want. So now we're talking about things like, is it quality, timeliness, brilliance, all those words that we think of when we think of values. Truth is a big one for a lot of people. And so are we telling the truth to ourselves and others? Are we pulling the wool over our eyes? Are we not telling the whole truth? And how do people react when we do that or don't do that? How do we react when we do that or don't do that? So I love the question, Jeffrey. Thank you so much. I appreciate that idea. So knowing what is important to you will help you shape the questions They will help you shape the questions you ask yourself to determine the priorities to keep you on the general path you want to go. Now, no matter how much we plan, no matter how much we are doing, those of you at any part of your life, if you are above 5 years old, recognize, I want something, I'm going to do this thing, and we're going to see what happens. Well, it might work out for us, and we might do it again. It might not work out for us, and we might decide not to do it again or to try again in a different way. So there's a learning component, an experience, and actually specifically experiential learning component of how we show up in these different situations and what we do and things like that. Is there anything you would add to that, Scott?
No, I think you pretty well covered it. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you, Jeffrey. Okay, so applying this to ourselves, which I feel like Scott might be choosing these on purpose to help us move this conversation forward, because the first one from Marilyn and the second one from Jeffrey move this conversation right along, because we are going to talk about this now for ourselves. We can know where we're at. We can know where we're going. We can document the gap, actually write it down so we can see, right? Don't just think about it. Don't just dream it. Visualize it in your head. None of that. Get it on a piece of paper so you can look at it, because it's there that the possibility becomes. And the only way we can ensure we hold the actual gap while we're evaluating our possibilities and what direction we want to take is to have it written on paper. Because the more we think about something, the more it changes. Have you ever thought about that? A situation can be really horrible in the moment, and we have a chance to step back and walk away and come back a little bit later, and it's way less intense. And we can step back and walk away, and we can come back a little bit later and go, oh, now I can chew on this a little bit. I can figure out what we need to do here. And once we start figuring out what we need to do here, we're tweaking in our mind all the stuff we've already thought about and the way we reacted and our reasons for thinking that it occurred in the first place. And if we don't write it down, we might be inadvertently like Hansel and Gretel. We're leaving breadcrumbs and somebody's coming along and picking them up. And that somebody that's coming along and picking them up isn't a witch. It's us. We're sabotaging ourselves to not get to the finish line because we forget where we're going, not purposefully. However, that's the gist of it. We don't have a clear path of where we've come from, so we don't really know where we're going. We just have these feelings, and feelings are good to a point. However, documentation allows us to know we are succeeding in the way that we want, to know we are growing enough and what we must continue to practice to get the things that we want. All right, that means when we're thinking about what we say and what we do. So let's say, I'll use me as an example because remember, we had a whirlwind at the beginning. I shared with you a little bit about that. So here I am in this middle of this whirlwind. Oh, I have 5 more minutes, no problem. We've done this 167 times. We'll be good with just being a couple minutes late. So I squeezed in another task. Well, my desire to accomplish as much as possible has made me now tardy. And I have to choose. If I'm looking at this, right? If I'm looking at this, okay, so I'm choosing. There's a whole time is a cadence, and we agree with other people how to do this. So if we're making an agreement that time is important, and here I am squeezing something in and I'm late, we already talked about what the perceptions of other people might be about me. But let's talk about me. What do I think? Where does time and timeliness fit into truth, elegance, and curiosity? Well, it doesn't. So therein lies. Okay, it's not one of my values. It's not important to me. Time is not important to me as in a general sense. However, to be curious, to be elegant, and to be truthful, I have an integrity that is built in, and to do what I said I'm going to do. And I was late because I squeezed something else in. So here I am thinking, yes, I'm going to be really efficient, even if I'm pushing the envelope. The problem is, when I push the envelope for just me, that's different when I push the envelope and it includes other people that I have made an agreement with around time. So we're using this, and I have to decide now. I have to decide, okay, I know where I'm at. All right, I'm tardy. And I know that other people are going to be in a different situation and somewhat stressed out because of my tardiness. I know where I'm going. I want people to enjoy working with me. I want to have a good time. I want to make it the least stressful possible. So I know where I'm going. Now, we've documented the gap here. So I would write down all the things that make me late, all the things that I do to try and maximize my time and inadvertently make myself late, and all the things that are now possibilities of what can I change to be able to be more accountable to myself so that I may show up in a way that best supports the people that are supporting me. Aha! First 3 steps done. Now I can choose. Okay, how big of a deal is this? How big of a deal is it that Scott and Eva come and do the show with me every week? Can I do it without them? Do I want to change? Do I want to make them stressed out all the time? Maybe. Do I want to be making things as easy as possible? Do I want to ensure that we have the best possible shows and decide what's that level? What's that bar that makes a show successful? And that includes what happens before that we go on air and after we go off of air. Maybe those things are important to me. I just have to sit down and evaluate them. And I say, sit down and evaluate. Are you kidding me? I don't sit down ever. And I can do this really quick because I practice this. So in my mind, I've already gone through all of those things. And who knows, maybe I needed an example and this happened because we needed an example for this show. I totally believe that might just be one of the reasons that today I was tardy. Okay. Now, knowing that about ourselves, how do we get the experience we need to be able to talk about something in the moment? Do we pull from the past? Do we pull from the future? Do we pull from the present? Well, from this show, you might have guessed, I pull from the present. All right. So now I have to decide. Do I like where things are at? Do I like it when this happens? Do I get the outcomes that I want when this happens? Is my team happy when this happens? And is the outcome and the result, the lasting result of this show, what I would like to see happen? Because in the end, we all have a contribution to it. And if I'm the one that's late and we're not getting the results, that's the first place to look. So my decision really is, you know what? In terms of truth, my truth is that I want everybody to have the time that they need to be the best that they can be, because when we are calm, we can adapt quicker. When we feel in control as much as we can with the things that we can control, we are able to adapt quicker. So my now decision is to change my behaviors. Don't do an extra thing that's only supposed to take 5 minutes when all you have is 5 minutes, right? Don't do that. Just wait until you have 10 minutes just in case, because that's really what happened this morning. I got 5 more minutes. I'll do this thing. And it turned out to be 10 minutes later, and it was time to be together and getting ready and getting on air. So for me, the decision is, okay, I really have this time cadence. I've made these agreements with people to do these things. And now that I've made agreements with people to do these things, and we have times, I must also be on time. And when I am not, what was that case? What was that? So for me, the decision is next time when I find myself in this situation and I can feel it and experience it and think about it, I have 5 more minutes. Let me squeeze in this last task. Well, okay. Nope. I'm going to put that on hold because right now, preparing for whatever's coming next, the situation I'm walking into is more important because I'll be all in, I'll be on time, everybody else will be all in, and they'll be on time. And when we all show up and we're all in tune, we all have a chance to succeed more. So that would be a long way to describe what happens for me in 2 minutes now. And it's going to take 5 minutes because we think about this. This is a high-level executive function. This is a skill that a lot of people don't have. What can we do? How can we do it? And what change do we want to make? What can we control about our choices that not only honor us, but those that we have made commitments to? All right. So that is the guts of what we're talking about. The thing is, I want to evaluate priorities. And before we talk about evaluating priorities, because that will tie a little bit into what what Marilyn asked and what Jeffrey asked. All right, Scott, give us another question.
Stand by.
Yeah, no problem. And while I'm standing by, I'm going to do a quick shout out. Rebecca Davidson, mwah, it is so good to have you in our audience. Love your comment. Live in the moment.
Hello, my name is Marilyn.
Oh,
okay.
Sorry,
yep, good. No worries.
I've got it right here. My bad. David from Cincinnati asks, how important is it your values and priorities match those of your boss?
Ooh. Okay. Well, that's interesting. That's an interesting conundrum because most of the time, if you're a business owner, your personal values and separating your personal values from your business is a place to work. is a place to work on. And there's a lot of juicy stuff there. What David is sharing is also very juicy. Do I have to modify my values to match whoever I report to? Wow. Well, the answer is no, you don't, because your values are your values and it's how you do you. And as soon as you stop doing you, everything else will slowly crumble underneath and around you. And it may not affect anybody else, but it sure will affect you. So I'm glad you asked this question, David, because what we have to do though, okay, so we have to, when we work in a group, we have to understand the dynamic. And if we choose to ignore it, the path will be harder. If we choose to take the victim side, our path will be harder. If we choose to always be assertive and always know what to do, even when we're not asked or asked to know what to do and get it done, we create a harder path for ourselves. So that dynamic is really important. We can understand a dynamic and show up with our value set to work together with somebody else in such a way that benefits the team without diminishing what's important to us, without diminishing the light inside of us. Our heart light is what we call it in my house, and I reference that once in a while. Our heart light shines bright by the actions we take. Our heart light shines bright by the actions that other people take toward us when they are positive and they fill us up. And so when there's a problem, the first thing is, if I feel like I can only be a certain way with my superior. All right. Let's do the gap analysis on it. Oh, I love that we have this now. We've already talked about it. So the cat's out of the bag. We can use it. So I would say, what's really important to me about being in this role today? And list out everything that you love about your role. Then what is valuable in this role for me 3 years from now? And list everything. Because what we might find that the role that we're in is a stepping stone. It might be a stepping stone to our superior's job, but it also might be a stepping stone to a different job, a different role, a different set of responsibilities someplace else. So when we know what's important to us and why we're in our role, we can now have better conversations around that. So then we can say, okay, good. What I've got gets me for about 3 years, but I don't know if it gets me after. Now I have to ask that conversation. So what would it take? What would it take to keep you in this role where you're at, progressing up the path, the growth path that's available to you within the organization that you're at in a positive way? Well, that's a question we have to ask our superior. And if we feel like we're already bending ourselves to be liked or appreciated or preferred by, and at least, not getting in the way of, right? We don't want anybody above us or beside us to sabotage what we're doing. And so we've got to look at ourselves. So how do we have that conversation? Well, the conversation is to have the answer is to have the conversation. So once we know what we want and where we're going, and once we understand what is happening that creates discord between of whatever's on that path, now we can have a conversation. Hey, I'm confused about this. Will you give me some more insight? I'm noticing that when I do this, here's the response. Is there something, what do you see the action being? Because now what we might be prioritizing is right based off of the information we have. We're opening the conversation to be able to allow somebody else to tell us what's important to them. And when we have somebody above us and beside us, sometimes we have no choice and they forget to tell us. And I know I'm guilty of this. I totally forget to tell people sometimes everything that's going on. And people need different information to be able to understand what's going and how we're going forward. Be courageous and ask for it. Ask for it. So it's important that they don't have to align. However, we have to be able to work together. To be able to work together, we have to understand the dynamic. And I'm saying have to here because we want it to be easy, not hard. So to get to us where we want to go, to allow us to have the development that we want, there's an element of courage to speak up. Here's where I'm at, and it doesn't feel very good. Or here's where I'm at, and it feels great. And here's where I'm going, and it's different than what I'm doing right now. Gap analysis, make a choice. What questions and conversations are part of the execution? What are we going to change? What is this action that's going to allow us to open the door and plant the seeds for further conversations for what we want to be doing here, what we want to be developing within ourselves, to be the best us that we can be in the role that we are in right now. Right now. So thank you for submitting that question. I appreciate it, David. And that ties back into, this right now piece. Our values don't change. They may look different in different situations. We may organize them a little different. We may define them a little different to fit the dynamic, but they're always part of who we are. And our priorities, the actions that we choose to take in those situations, are dictated by the values that we have, by who we are, by what we, most importantly, understand the situation to be. So let's talk a little bit about this self-awareness piece, because to be able to evaluate our priorities, we need a level of self-awareness, which, by the way, is a second skill. Gap analysis on tiny small things like starting with us, and then is one skill, high level thinking skill. And then the other high level thinking skill incorporates the 3 levels of awareness. The first being, we're finding patterns. We know what's happening, and we can now start asking questions. Do we like this pattern? And then the second level of awareness is being able to say, we're in the middle of this craziness again. And now that I know that we're in the middle of it, it looks different. What can I observe, hear, and experience to think about later once we're done? Because we're in the middle, we're in this pattern. It's going to play out. Once that roller coaster starts, there's really not a lot of ways to get off until it gets back to the station, right? And then the third is, I'm in the line for the roller coaster instead of the Ferris wheel. Okay, do I really want to be on this roller coaster? Do I want to go down this path, or do I want to make a different choice? And that's the point we are striving for when we're thinking about gap analysis and we're thinking about self-awareness, that they intertwine and play off of each other so nicely. So we're always looking for patterns. We're always looking for discrepancies in what we're saying versus what we're doing. And when we excel at that and we practice it and we're working within ourselves, we have the ability to then make choices, which, by the way, it's bold. It is bold to have high level thinking skills. Practicing awareness in those 3 steps, very key. Understanding gap analysis, very key, because then we know what we value and we can make our actions align with our value. And if we come with a whole list of tasks or objectives or something like that, we get to decide what order to do them that has maybe the most impact, maybe the most added value, maybe the most urgent, right? Whatever that is, we can prioritize our actions and our objectives and our short-term goals accordingly. All right, you have listened to Priorities and Values, Program 168. This is, I'm not going to say this is, you've already heard that part. Program notes will be at voiceofboldbusiness.com/P168. That is voiceofboldbusiness.com/P for program 168. You can also search the website Priorities and Values. Subscribe and rate this program. You've been watching live. Leave us a comment. Go over to the website. Pick the platform that you listen to and watch your programs on. Subscribe to us. Like us. We want to know that we are providing feedback. We want your feedback to know we're providing content that is relevant and useful to you today as a leader. It's a conversation, ladies and gentlemen, so join in. #VBB Radio, email radio@reddirection.com, and to come being able to send your audio questions in as well. We will incorporate all of those. This is engagement, and it's through that conversation and engagement that you and me and everybody who's in the conversation decides what it's like to be a leader today, what it means to be effective, to have personal leadership and get results. So it's really important for this concept of high-level thinking that we understand the difference between priorities and values.
Subscribe at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and get more information, program notes, and past episodes. Bold leaders approach each situation and focus on action to achieve a higher level of leadership. Jessica Dewell, your business advocate, is the host of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. Thank you for joining us.